Okay, so I personally think Skyward Sword gets too much hate, so here we go. Here's 15 reasons why you're not allowed to hate it. Obviously, the world isn't perfect, but I think a lot of thought was put into it, and I think the best thing it does for the game is how much it impacts the story. Every little thing going from the forest to the desert impacts the story on such a great level, while at the same time not going too far off into it, and that can't be said for every Zelda game. Every building in it and every piece of evidence that something might have happened just has so much history behind it, and it has so much story to still tell just from the world itself. So obviously I don't think the world is perfect, but I will say that it had a ton of thought put into it, and it was an amazing world, and it's actually one of my favorite, even though it's very linear and just very hard to get around. Even people that aren't fans of Skyward Sword can still agree that the story was incredible. It's one of the best out of the entire series. So much thought was put into it, and it has a huge impact on the Zelda timeline and explains a lot. It's also one of those Zelda stories that could probably be put into a book pretty well. It plays into the story in such a way that it explains the past, the present, and the future, and it could just be all laid out into a giant book, I guess. I also really like the way that Link reacts to the things that are happening in the game. It adds more to the story when you can tell how he's actually feeling. In a lot of the other games, he kind of just does things, and he actually has more of a personality in this game, and the story affects that. The characters have got to be my favorite part about Skyward Sword. I mean, obviously Zelda and Link and Groose are all incredible, but it's not just the lead characters, because there's more to be said about the smaller characters. Every character has a unique personality that isn't always constant, and you can see their emotions and personalities switch depending on what time of day it is or what situation they're in. For example, we have this guy, and I forgot his name, but he's really happy during the day and he's depressed at night. And Beetle's a psycho during the day, but he's kind of fun to talk with if you follow him back to his island. Not every character is always the same, and it makes the entire game feel more realistic. It's probably my favorite part about all of Skyward Sword. We also can't forget that the cutscenes in Skyward Sword were just incredible. I think it probably has the best cutscenes out of any other Zelda game. And don't get me wrong, I love Breath of the Wild cutscenes and the Twilight Princess cutscenes, but it's something about the choices that were made with the colors and sounds that it just adds how epic the game is. It really encourages you to play it all the way through, because you really want to know what happens next with the cutscenes, honestly. I think that Skyward Sword was the first Zelda game to have an orchestral soundtrack, to have a soundtrack made with an orchestra. But anyways, I love the story and the cutscenes and the world, but just the music. Music is what makes the entire game. You can't have Skyward Sword without the music. The reason I loved the game from the very start was because the game starts with I think the aesthetic of Zelda games is really hard to place because of the adventures that the games take you through. It's really hard to commit to one vibe for the entire game and stick with it, because you still need to tell a story and people need to have fun with it, and that's fine. I like Zelda because of the way it does that. I don't know how Skyward Sword did it, but it managed to have you travel to literally every possible location and still remind you of its aesthetic. What I mean is, the game has the same vibe in Skyward Temple that it does in the Earth Temple, even though they have completely different atmospheres. The game keeps up with its own aesthetic really well, whether you're in the sky or the desert or playing this minigame. It's just insane. Every Zelda game has its own unique art style that in a lot of ways defines the game on a huge level. Whenever a new Zelda game comes out, there's always in some way a new kind of art style. This could even just be a small thing like adding new textures or changing the way people look, like in Ocarina of Time versus Majora's Mask. Or it could change literally everything, like Wind Waker versus Twilight Princess. My point is, Skyward Sword's art style is this really cool watercolor look. It's probably my favorite out of the entire series. It's only there if you look closely too, and I think it's just a lot of what the game's about. I think this was the first game to really give you an advantage by having the Master Sword. When I got the Master Sword in Twilight Princess, I didn't see much of a difference between it compared to my first sword. There wasn't much of a gameplay difference. But as soon as you upgrade to your Master Sword in Skyward Sword, it's just so much better than your first one. I think the game really rewards you when you're finally done upgrading your sword. You can actually be like, I have a better sword now, and not every Zelda game does that.
The dungeons in the game are phenomenal.
Not only are they fun to play through, they also have the coolest designs. This pirate ship is probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and the fact that you get to play through an ancient factory, it's just so cool. And it's also just the way they're set up and the way they all have their own story to it. It's more than a dungeon. There's a lot of really cool items in Skyward Sword. The claw shot was fun in Twilight Princess, but then it gives you double that in Skyward Sword. It looks so cool. It's my favorite thing ever. I also love the whip and the dust bellows and the bug net. It's just the best item design. They're also a ton of fun to use. Like, even with motion controls, I had a lot more fun with these items than I did with Twilight Princess. So the side quests are mostly just gratitude crystals. Gratitude crystals shouldn't have been fun, but I enjoyed it so much because it didn't only reward you with really cool stuff, but it also gave you the opportunity to get to know every person in Skyloft just a little better. And it wasn't repetitive either. Every side quest has a different story to it, and when I think of Skyward Sword, it wouldn't be the same without side quests. I actually don't have much to say about the minigames, but I think they were so weird, but they were also so fun. It goes from this to this to this. They were so random, but I had so much fun with them, more so than other minigames in Zelda, and it was just probably my favorite minigames. It's just the best. The Knight Academy is huge, and it's probably the perfect way to start the game. I think the fact that you walk out of your room to find that you're in a giant academy is just awesome. I think Skyward Sword has the largest buildings in the entire series, like the bazaar and the sealed temple. There's just so much more to do inside than a lot of other games, and it was just a lot of fun to do that. I'll admit they probably could have done more with this feature, but I thought it was a lot of fun to collect bugs and monster claws, and I don't know why I thought it was. It was just fun, and it was just cool. I just had fun with the monster claws and all of the different butterflies. I don't even think Breath of the Wild does too much of this. It's one of the only Zelda games where you can not only upgrade your shield, but also the items that you have. And the upgrades are actually really good too. It's almost like having a skill tree in Zelda, where you can make the beetle speed up or have the slingshot shoot 3 bullets at once.
Okay, so that's the end of the video. I hope you liked it. I've never made a video like this before. This is actually the first upload on my channel, so if you liked it, please consider subscribing and tell me if I should make more of these, because I really enjoyed making this one. So I hope I can see you in another video, and yeah.